In 1995, a then 21-year-old electrical engineering student in Stansbury, Missouri, named Mike Marcum, began tinkering with a device he created to create a Jacob's ladder. He merely wanted to make a fun gadget. During this experiment, the device gave an odd electrical arc and ended up creating a vortex. This vortex, seemingly according to him, created a tunnel through space and time. Essentially, he claimed to have created a time machine. He built the machine multiple times and claims that he even used it, traveling 800 miles and skipped 2 years. Of course, all the equipment and video has disappeared. We are left wondering if any of this is true and where Mike currently is now, or should I say, when is Mike currently now?
At any rate, he didn't want you to continue. Now, tell the people what it is that you made. You got what were you trying to make? What had you done? You built a little scale model of what's called a Jacob's ladder, right?
Yeah.
And a Jacob's ladder is a very high voltage, low current thing that drives up the...
Yeah, it's just a climbing arc.
Climbing arc, yeah. And at some point when you had built this scale model, you had taken, what was it, a screw?
Yeah.
Metal screw?
Yeah, a little sheet metal screw.
And you threw it through the arc, or through the field, and that sucker disappeared, gone.
Yeah.
Right? And then, what, reappeared?
Yeah, about 2 feet away.
About 2 feet away, but it just flat disappeared. I mean, it was gone somewhere.
Yeah.
Through this little machine you had... How big was the little one that you built?
Well, it was 20,000 volt spark at about 100 milliamps. So, the transformer itself was stuck in a 5-gallon bucket of oil. So,
when Mike created his initial machine and saw that there was a vortex created, he attempted to throw 3 metal screws through the vortex, one at a time. Each time the screw disappeared, and then reappeared moments later on the table in a different location. He did this with the 3rd screw, and as he did it, the laser on the device caught fire. Now, intrigued with what he may have uncovered and facing having to fix his laser, he wondered if he's going to do that, he might as well upscale the device. He began to think he may have stumbled on a time travel device. He wanted to eventually see if he could step up and put something like an orange through the vortex to see if it got fried or something like that. And if it turned out fine, he would escalate to living things, and eventually even himself. For this, he would need a lot of power. For the next version, he needed large transformers. He initially shopped around and saw that this would have cost him around $20,000. So he decided to break into a King City power station and just take them. Once he had the transformers, he began to test out the machine, causing localized blackouts in his neighborhood. It was at that time that the authorities were notified and Mike was promptly arrested, eventually convicted and sentenced to probation. This is when he first appeared on Coast to Coast with Art Bell and began to tell his story. During these 2 interviews, one in 1995 and one in 1996, Mike did manage to procure some donors who would lead him to later building him his machine again, on the up and up. It is worth mentioning that this donor and money-making aspect came more from Art than it did from Mike, who seemed a little unaware of the concept at all. In his second interview, he said he was close to completing his machine and it was going to take his phone with him when he was going to test it using himself. He claimed that with his upgrades, that he was able to create a vortex large enough for him to walk through. They went on to talk about the Philadelphia experiments, and Mike did show some concerns that he didn't want to end up like them, fused in solid matter. After the show, and some time, namely a year, passed, and suddenly Mike had disappeared. Shortly after the disappearance, someone called the show claiming to have found a newspaper story that said, "In the 1930s, police found a dead man on a beach in California. He was crushed to death in a strange metal tube. the man was unrecognizable and a mysterious device was found near his body. The caller said the device looked like a cell phone. Now, I'm going to assume that this cell phone was the caller's interpretation and not the original 1930s report, if this was even true. If it is not, then that last line is a dead giveaway. Now, we eventually heard from Mike again. In 2015, he gave his third interview with Art Bell, where he detailed what had happened to him when he disappeared in 1997. He claimed that he went into the time machine in 1998 and woke up in a field in Ohio, 800 miles away from his original location. And after collecting himself, stunned and confused with no money, did not take his phone or wallet or ID, suggesting that the electromagnetic field would have made them useless. Now, I would say that a physical picture ID wouldn't be useless even if the magnetic strip wouldn't be readable. But he said that he didn't know what happened and where he was. He wandered to a street and eventually made it to a town, into a homeless shelter where he found out it was the year 2000 and not 1988. The story from here, Mike would tell, is that he would get back to his warehouse and everything was gone. All his notes, videotape, and equipment was gone. None of them had been recovered. None has shown up. None of the donors has come forward. To this date, nothing has ever shown up, and no one involved has ever come forward. The last known post from Mike since then was made on Reddit, at least by the username that everybody thinks was him, and he was asked if he has built a new machine, in which he said he did, but needed some parts, and since then we haven't heard from him. This was in 2022, and now we're left to wonder, when is Mike? No, there are two things that are contradictory to each other that prevents me from believing this story in one way or the other. On the debunking side, it is very strange that no video was ever captured of these experiments, and the convenient disappearance of that video he said he did take, but was lost. Also, the convenience of it never showing up at all in this time makes me believe none of this really happened, or at least none of the actual time travel thing happened. But on the other side, Mike has not made a book deal, disliked any of the publicity he had from the first go-around on Art Bell's show, and doesn't seem to be a money-making or attention-seeking hoax-type story or person. So it appears that if it's made up, it would be for some other reason. Like, really just to be a troll. It doesn't seem like that from his interviews. It doesn't seem like someone would have the will to do this over 2 decades. There doesn't seem to be a motivation to make this up as a hoax. But then there's also nothing but the original documented case involving the police and the arrest surrounding the original experiments. He claims to have had donors for the second experiment, but none of them have come forward after his reappearance. I mean, this could be for libel or fear of prosecution reasons, if they felt something illegal was done or any legal repercussions could be made against them. But also could be just that they don't want the attention. The latter is understandable. But they, of course, could have reached out to Mike and offered him location of his equipment and his video. Of course, the lack of evidence and lack of motivation to hoax makes this all extremely compelling. To me, very much like the John Teeter story. However, with the Teeter case, they had no real-world validating circumstances, and there is more of a motive there for a hoax, as Teeter was anonymous. Mike shows his face and talked to reporters and went on Art Bell's show 3 times. So, I don't know what to make of this. The believer in me wants to say he's rebuilt his time machine and is now somewhere in the future. But I'm not even sure that time exists the way we believe it does. So I'm not entirely sure he would be in a new time like we think of it. If it did work, regardless, I'd love to believe. But the skeptic part of me, and those of you who watch this channel know, I try really hard not to be a skeptic. But this side of me wonders if it's just someone pulling a long, elaborate gag. Or a way for Mike to gain some fundraising money here and there for his own projects. And the latter could reveal his motivation for this whole story. Now, if it is true, we won't know. I'm guessing until sometime in the future, if we ever do find out the truth. And so we're left to wonder, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Is this real, fake? I'm sure you've all heard the story before, but I find it the most fascinating possible time travel story. Because the possibility is true, it's not the traditional sci-fi epic that you normally find. So I find it very fascinating. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and talk to you next time.